intelligence brief. It's focused squarely on the security posture over in Europe East. This is specifically looking at the period after the big Zapad redeployments.
Hmm.
And the whole theme, the title they're using, really sums it up. Steady posture, smarter spend.
Mm.
Right. So our mission here really is to get past the headlines. We want to distill what's actually happening operationally and with procurement. The technical stuff, the SLAs, the checklists, the details that show how security is being maintained. It's high readiness, sure, but also, crucially, low drama. We want those specifics that really define this smarter spend idea. Is it actually working on the ground?
Yeah, and what's really fascinating, I think, is this, it marks a fundamental shift in philosophy, doesn't it? This isn't about reacting to some new crisis popping up. It's really about proactively building and sustaining defense infrastructure for the long haul. Maintenance, basically, not just emergency buys. And that sustainable angle, it's right there in their lead headline. Quiet holds, the mesh thickens.
The mesh thickens.
Yeah, it suggests, calm on the surface maybe, but underneath that security network, it's getting denser, more resilient.
Okay, let's start there then. Quiet holds. What does that actually look like in a high-risk zone? Because quiet doesn't mean, nothing's happening. It sounds like it means discipline.
Exactly. Discipline is the word. And the brief is quite positive on the stability indicators operationally. The main one for the air domain, 0 fresh allied airspace breaches overnight. That's a consistent finding they're highlighting.
0 breaches overnight. Okay.
Yeah.
And how are they achieving that consistency?
Well, through meticulous work. Layered SACAPes, combat air patrols, they're staying active right through dusk, which is often a tricky period.
Hold on, layered SICAs. For listeners maybe not deep in air defense terms, what does layered really signify there? What's the strategy?
Good question. It just means they're not relying on like a single fence in the sky. You've got different types of aircraft, different altitudes, different speeds, covering overlapping zones. Think of it like layers of netting. If there's a hole in one, another layer is already there covering it. It's about building in redundancy right into the air picture.
Got it. Overlapping fields of vision, redundancy, makes sense. And the support structure for that, I assume, needs to be just as disciplined.
Absolutely. And it is, according to this. The rotations for the Essential Infrastructure QRA, Quick Reaction Alert, and ATS, the eyes in the sky, they're steady, consistent, and importantly, they span the whole flank. We're talking Baltics all the way down to the Black Sea. That coverage is vital. And crucially, the rules of engagement. The ROE for shoot if inside, unchanged. That consistency is paramount for preventing mistakes. Clarity for the operators.
Right, clarity is key. Now, here's where I thought it got really interesting. The brief says the quiet isn't electronic. It seems the routine nature of electronic threats, EW, is now just factored in. Part of the operational landscape.
Yes, and that's maybe the biggest sign of maturity in this whole posture. EW, electronic warfare, and GNSS advisories think GPS issues, they're now classed as routine. They aren't scrambling in surprise each time. It's expected.
And it's predictable, too.
Highly specific, actually. The report points to these recurring short pockets of spoofing. And they happen specifically from sunset through to late evening. Predictable timing, predictable geography.
Huh. Sunset to late evening. Is there a tactical logic there? Or just what they happen to see?
It generally lines up with, well, peak civilian traffic getting off the roads and also lower visibility for ground observation. So it's probably the best window to, let's say, test systems or cause friction without necessarily triggering a full kinetic response.
And the adaptation to this is the key part, isn't it? Instead of grinding to a halt, key sectors are just working around it.
Exactly. Aviation and trucking specifically, they're just operating using established degraded mode SOPs, standard operating procedures.
Degraded mode SOPs. Yeah. So if I'm driving a truck near a border, relying on GPS, what does that mean practically? Am I literally pulling out a paper map?
Essentially, yeah. Or relying more on inertial navigation, terrestrial aids, things like that. It means having backups. For critical stuff like trucking and flights, it means verified navigation aids on the ground, maybe preloaded maps, definitely mandatory comms checks over voice channels, not relying solely on satellite signals. The fact that commerce keeps moving pretty reliably despite this nightly electronic noise, that really shows these playbooks are working.
Okay, so that operational discipline naturally leads us to the resources side.
Yep.
The smarter spend. How is this different from, say, the procurement scramble we saw a couple of years back? What makes it smarter?
Well, previously you saw a lot of focus on big, fast buys, right? huge platforms often rush through emergency procedures, which, can drive up costs and sometimes means the sustainment piece gets overlooked initially. The shift now is towards sustainable readiness, long-term thinking. So we're seeing capitals locking in more of that sustained assistance funding, safe tranches, they call them, into really foundational areas. Things like sensors, jammers, SHORAD, that's short-range air defense, critical repair spares, and importantly, operator training, including for EW.
So it's less about buying the flashy new jet.
And more about making sure the 5 jets you already have can actually fly reliably for the next 10 years. It's bolstering the existing structure.
You mentioned safe tranches. How is that funding different from regular military aid? Is it new money or reallocation?
Yeah. It seems to be largely about prioritization within existing or allocated budgets, earmarking funds specifically for sustainment, for readiness. It's a recognition that often the critical failure isn't the main platform, it's the lack of a single spare part, or maybe not enough trained people to operate it effectively. SAFE prioritizes keeping the machine running smoothly.
Right, keeping the machine running. And that focus on efficiency, on predictability, seems baked into the contracts now. The brief mentions early deliveries tied to monthly delivery SLAs, service level agreements. Why is a monthly SLA such a big deal in military procurement?
Oh, it's huge, a really significant shift. Traditionally, military supply chains might work on yearly, maybe bi-yearly delivery schedules. So if your order of, say, critical engine spares got delayed, your gear could be out of action for months. By demanding monthly SLAs, they're essentially forcing the defense supply chain to behave more like, I don't know, a utility. Predictable, reliable, continuous flow. It dramatically cuts down the time vital systems interceptors. Air defense might sit idle waiting for a simple part.
Okay, so it greases the wheels of maintenance. What specific hardware gets priority under this smarter, faster cadence?
The list really confirms they're optimizing for the current fight, the daily threats. Interceptors are high priority. Drone kits, obviously. EW sets. And, underlined multiple times, spares, spares, spares. It's all about those immediate actionable layers against the air and electronic threats we just talked about.
And speaking of drones, counter-UAS tactics are obviously critical. What's the progress there operationally?
Yeah. Well, the brief notes across capital detect, decide, defeat, TDP pack, tactics, techniques, procedures has been finalized. Getting that standardized response across different allied nations, that's absolutely vital for things to work seamlessly. And related to the SLAs, framework contracts are now strongly preferred over just one-off purchases. Again, aiming for consistency, sustainability in the supply lines.
Okay, but does this raise a question, though? If the focus is so heavily on maintenance, sustainment, are they potentially neglecting, the next generation of major platforms? Is there a risk of falling behind technologically?
That tension is kind of implied, yeah. But the report's emphasis is clearly that the current posture demands functional readiness right now. The long-term view seems to be, until we can systematically handle today's threats with reliable maintenance and well-trained crews, jumping to the next super extensive platform might actually be irresponsible. It's like you got to build a solid foundation before you start adding floors to the skyscraper. Right?
Build the foundation first. Okay, so we've got this picture of a stable, busy, but disciplined security environment. Let's look at the civilian side. How are nearby markets, the economies reacting? Is all this activity making them nervous?
Apparently not much, according to this brief. Currencies like the Polish zloty, the Hungarian forint, the Romanian leu, PLN, HUF are on they're described as range-bound, not swinging wildly.
Range-bound. Why would that be? You got nightly EW warnings, constant air patrols. Why aren't investors getting spooked by that persistent elevated risk?
It seems the markets have basically priced it in. The friction is routine now. It's predictable. The brief makes a point that their front ends, the short-term trading track, broader EU economic news like inflation figures or interest rate decisions much more closely than these operational security developments. It would likely take something really significant, something kinetic and unpredictable, or a major policy shock to really move the needle at this point. The security noise is background static, not a systemic risk signal for them.
Okay, so the markets have adapted. And that stability extends into daily life, too. Mobility.
Seems so. It extends directly into civilian life and commerce.
Tell us about movement. Goods, people.
Well, Belarus crossings are noted as near normal. That's pretty significant, though the brief does wisely suggest planning for maybe an extra 10-20 minutes buffer time, just prudent planning. Rail intermodal transport also running on schedule, mostly. And the really crucial Ukraine corridors, they remain stable. Regular inspections happen, but there's a clear priority for humanitarian lanes.
And is the system prepared for sudden spikes? What if things do flare up unexpectedly?
Readiness seems high there, too. Airport operations are largely normal day to day, but the NOTAM playbooks are ready to go. NOTAMs being notices to airmen, basically warnings. Those playbooks are prepped for any potential mass strike blips, ensuring they can implement rapid, standardized shutdowns or rerouting if needed. Minimizes chaos, maximizes safety.
What really stands out here, then, is that drive for predictability. It feels like the whole logistics world, from finance desks to freight forwarders, they don't need zero risk, they need predictable ETAs, arrival times. And this posture, where the threats are somewhat known and the responses are standardized, seems to deliver that predictability, even amid the noise.
Exactly. Predictability trumps zero risk in logistics.
Yeah, and to help analysts, decision makers sort of get their arms around all these different inputs quickly, the brief introduces this framework they call SCALE. It's presented as a kind of quick insight map, just to clarify the different layers of concern.
SCALE. Okay, let's break that down. What's the S? S is for stakeholders. And this is quite useful because it specifies exactly what different groups need from the intelligence. So for residents, it's about crisp, need to act pings, only alert them when action is needed. For logistics, it's those predictable ETAs we just talked about. Mayors need info for rumor control, preventing panic. And SMEs, small businesses, they're watching fuel and insurance costs. The information needs are different for each group.
That's a very practical way to tailor the output. Okay, what about C? Constraint flip. Sounds intriguing.
Constraint flip just means deliberately changing your priority to solve a bottleneck or problem. And the critical flip here is clarity over volume. They've clearly recognized that when you're overloaded with information, sometimes less is more, fewer, but sharper, more reliable alerts beat a constant, confusing drip feed of unverified stuff. It helps keep that low drama environment stable.
Right, cut through the noise. Makes sense. Then A is for analogy. How are they suggesting analysts think about this whole situation?
The analogy they recommend is treating the flank like winter ops, winter operations, meaning basically slow, layered, and highly disciplined readiness.
Winter ops. Like layering clothes for the cold, you're layering defenses because the environment is inherently hostile. Is that the idea?
Precisely that. You don't sprint across a frozen landscape, you move methodically, check your gear constantly, you layer your defenses, CAT-Ps, EWS, SHORAD. You make sure every piece of equipment is meticulously maintained because failure in winter is serious. It's about preparing for harsh conditions, but operating with deliberate caution every single day.
Okay, winter discipline. And L is for layers, which describes the range of impact.
Correct. From the very small to the very large. The impact ranges from micro stuff like getting the timing of GNSS advisories or NOTAMs exactly right, all the way up to the macro level, which is alliance credibility itself.
Yeah.
Everything that happens or fails to happen at the micro level, like a supplier missing a monthly SLA for spares, ripples up and affects that bigger picture perception of readiness and commitment.
It's all connected. Finally, E for edge cases. What are the really tricky, specific scenarios they're most worried about?
They flag two specific ones as top concerns. One is potential EW overlap with medevac flights, electronic warfare interfering with critical medical evacuations. That needs incredibly careful deconfliction to avoid tragic outcomes. The second is dealing with debris false alarms, especially in sparsely populated areas. A falling piece of space junk or even a weather balloon could look like something hostile on radar, potentially diverting high-value assets like fighter jets unnecessarily if not verified quickly.
Right. Those sound like genuinely difficult coordination problems. So
Yeah.
with that SELE framework in mind, the immediate watch list items, the next 48, 72 hours, they really reflect that focus on execution, don't they? Maintenance and delivery.
Absolutely. The watch list is very practical. Watching those dusk windows for repeat EW activity or maybe border skirting drones, the known friction points, but also very closely monitoring the safe sequencing. Which capital announces what next sensors, SHORAD, munitions, and crucially, tracking their specific delivery timelines. Are those monthly SLAs being met? The proof is in the pudding, as they say. Delivery, not just announcements.
The proof is in the delivery.
Yeah.
And tying it back to the economy piece, the macro glide watch list is still tracking things like month-end EU economic prints and currency movements in the PLN, HUF, REO. So economic health and security stability are being watched in tandem.
Yes, they're seen as interconnected. Hashtag tag outro. You know, the sign-off summary from the brief itself really captures the whole discipline mindset perfectly. It's simply discipline over drama. The advice is straightforward. Keep the layers up, keep the buffers honest, keep communications tidy. The core insight really is that quiet skies and stable borders aren't happening by accident. It's a constant, detailed, grinding maintenance job. And based on this evidence, at least, the maintenance is actually working.
It really is. Discipline over drama. And the level of detail we've got through here, monthly SLAs, standardized TTPs, even civilian trucks having degraded mode SOPs, it fundamentally shows what stable security demands. It's intense, detailed, often unglamorous maintenance. It's infrastructure management almost, not just crisis response. So we'll leave you, our listeners, with this thought to chew on. Given that even this kind of routine, stable security footing requires such intense, detailed, behind-the-scenes work, the SLAs, the layered patrols, the methodical winter ops approach, what does that tell you? What does it suggest about the psychological commitment, the infrastructural investment needed for genuine long-term stability in any complex system? And maybe how do you apply that winter ops discipline, that slow, layered, methodical readiness to long-term challenges in your own field, your own organization?